Have you ever wondered how some people make eating healthy, exercise, and managing stress look so easy? You can too. Welcome to Wellness Wisdom, where we uncover the secrets to lasting health and happiness and empower you to make wise health choices, see results, and create a healthy lifestyle for good. Join Camille Kennard, licensed social worker, certified health and wellness coach, a self-care specialist on the journey to explore how to make health and well-being possible for you. It's a health and wellness journey you can take together. Please welcome your host, Camille Kennard.
Welcome, everybody, to Wellness Wisdom today. It's February, and I love this month because we're really going to focus on love, loving others. You know, what can we do to love ourselves more? You know, that's really one of the things I'm very passionate about is love and self-compassion. And I feel like it's a really important aspect of our personal journey to health and wellness is taking care of ourselves because we love ourselves and learning how self-care can actually be an act of love and compassion for ourselves. So I'm really excited for the podcast that we're going to have today. You guys are going to love it. As you know me, I love to get people's stories that are inspirational and transformational in how they change their health. And today on my podcast, I have my guest, Brandon Halford. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So Brandon and I have a friend in common. She's one of my friends and biking buddies that I hang out with. And she told me I need to interview Brandon because he has an amazing story. So I'm super excited to hear the story and to talk to him about his own health journey. Brandon, as we were talking a little bit earlier, we were just kind of chatting about, you know, everybody has a different story as far as like learning to take care of their health or their journey with well-being. Can you tell us, like, what was it? You said you were kind of on this journey to like remake yourself. Can you tell us like what started you on that journey? Like what was the catalyst to that? Like what started you thinking about making a change in your life?
Yeah, so I after college, I did just sales jobs. I didn't do a lot with my life, and at about 35, so I'm 42 right now. At about 35, I can't say I woke up one day, but you know, it was 7 years ago. That's how we remember stuff. I just had this thought that like life isn't going to just happen. You have to make it happen. And deep down, I've always had a real belief that I could be who I could be, right? And at that period of my time, as I was looking at my life and examining who I really was, I recognized that the rubber just wasn't meeting the road. I was a long ways away from who I wanted to be. And so I just decided that I wanted to become that person. And so for me, I've always kind of believed in I've always kind of like viewed my life as having 5 pillars, like a social aspect, an emotional aspect, a mental aspect, a spiritual aspect, and then a physical aspect. And so at that time, like I had just moved back to Utah, went to school here, then I moved around the States for a while, and I came back and was living with one of my college buddies. And so the first thing I tackled was the social aspect. And and I through the years, through the last 7 years or so, I started to transform my life, and it was really hard. I mean, it's hard to break old habits, and it's hard to just focus on things that are uncomfortable to do. And to be honest, part of the reason that I didn't do a lot between the time I was probably 25 and 35 is because I really struggled with anxiety. And I don't say that very often, but now I'm just telling the whole nation, apparently.
Just a few of my followers.
So just a few of your followers. I struggled really, really badly with anxiety. So throughout each of these aspects of my life, like I really had to focus on that anxiety. And so for me, I don't want to get too far off the beaten path here, but I just found that if I whenever I started feeling these feelings of whatever it is, like I would just internalize that and look at that and accept that these feelings have value and have a purpose, and try to, learn what it meant and what was causing it, triggers that were causing me to feel anxiety. And, and as I started unraveling all of who I was, like these pillars started to get stronger and stronger. And about 2 years and about 3 months ago, my mom passed away. So it's been about 2 years and 6 months ago, and she had early onset dementia, and that kind of kick-started my ambition, so to speak. So so I mean, from there, 2 years ago, my New Year's resolution, every year I set one New Year's resolution, because if I set 10 of them, I keep 0 of them. So
yeah,
I just set one.
Simple, right?
And I set my New Year's resolution to quit eating sugar. And at the time, I was as heavy as I had ever been. I was 310 pounds. And so I was 6 feet tall. And there's a history of diabetes in my family. And my blood pressure was a little high. It's so tough to wake up on a day-to-day basis and realize, hey, I don't have any energy, or I'm not happy with who I am, or whatever it may be. It's just so much easier to look if you look through the, like the last 6 months, what does your life look like? And so I gave up sugar in January. Not super hardcore. I just don't eat anything with added sugar. Like I'll eat fruit and
like the
bread.
processed
Because
stuff.
for me, I wanted a lifestyle change. I didn't want to go on a diet. I didn't want to do the newest fad or whatever it was, because let's be honest, by 40, I'm pretty sure I know that that's not going to work for me. Right. So I gave up sugar. I would weigh on a weekly basis, and by the 1st of April, I had lost 0 pounds with no sugar. And so obviously I was discouraged by that fact. And but in my head, I'm like, hey, I made this commitment. I'm going to keep it. And so once in college, I gave up sugar for 6 months. And so I was like, my birthday is on June 16th, so right in the dead center in the middle of the year, right? So I was like, well, I'll just go till June, and I'll keep my commitment partially. I won't do the whole year, but because I mean, why not enjoy, cake if you're not going to lose weight from not eating it? So, but I went to June, and for some reason, I just couldn't do it. So I kept going. Like I went to a restaurant. When I was in college and I did it for 6 months, I gave up sugar for 6 months. Like on my birthday, my mom took me to a restaurant and we had a dessert together. And so that was my goal. I was like, I'm going to go to the restaurant. I'm going to have the same dessert, just kind of in memory of my mom. And I got there and I couldn't do it. So I didn't do it. And then in July, at the end of July, so literally from April 1st until I went to the doctor in July, my back was hurting me. I did not step on a scale once, because I was like, what's the point in continuing to be discouraged by that? So, but when I went to the doctor in July, I found out that I was down 25 pounds.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was crazy to me. And so from there, it was pretty easy to start getting motivated to continue. And at that point, I started focusing on my diet and focusing on just like calories in and versus calories out. So I started monitoring my calories. And in the year 2018, I lost about 60 pounds, and I went to the gym 0 times. Like it was strictly just from my diet. I was eating too much food. And for me, and I don't know that this is going to work for everyone, and I don't know, I hope this isn't bad, but like I didn't change what I ate. But if I ate a burger and fries, I had to make a hard decision for dinner. Like if I went to because my calories were gone for the day. So that alone changed the types of food that I was eating, because it's not fun to starve. And, but I was committed to staying on those calories. And then in 2019, I started training for a triathlon. So my New Year's resolution in 18 was no sugar. 2019 was to go to the gym 3 times a week. I did a triathlon in May. I'm down a total of 95 pounds now I'm down to 215 from 310. And my goal is to get to 199. I just want to go from 3 to 1. I don't even, if it's 199.9, I don't care.
Yeah. Just have that first number down to a 1, huh?
Exactly. So I'm almost 6'1". So I mean, 199's not, it's not, it's pretty decent weight for me, I think. But
I love what you're talking about, which is like this journey of self-discovery and how you were motivated by like wanting to improve yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. And maybe you, as we go along, we can talk a little bit about the impact that I call it weight release, because if we lose something, we want to find it. I don't really like the term losing it. I like the term of releasing it, because I feel like for most of us that have struggled with weight, which I had my struggles with that as well, there's something that's holding us back, right? Something that is keeping us from really taking good care of our health, taking care of ourselves. So it sounds like you kind of did this, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm committed to this. I can make this happen. And then you went through like the period of discouragement and like, oh, nothing's happening. But you stuck with it. What helped you to stick with it? Was it just the sheer commitment and grit? Like, what helped you kind of keep your course that way?
Well, I think there's several factors. Like I said, it's not the first time I've set a New Year's resolution. I've done it my whole life. And I usually, like I said, if I pick one, I do it. I do it the whole year. So I have over the last, 20 years, I've been able to build some really good habits through that process. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, that's just a hard thing to say, because it was some determination and some grit, but also I think that I had come to a point in my life when the desire to be better was outweighing the desire to continue on the path I was in. And I think once that teeter-totter had shifted enough, I think that it gave me some internal strength. And to be honest with you too, the physical was the last step in my journey of those 5 pillars. And for me personally, balance is the key. Like finding the balance in all those aspects of my life. It was a natural process for me. Like once I was socially healthy and emotionally healthy and mentally healthy and spiritually healthy, like the physical was the next logical step. And I had adjusted all those things in alignment, and the physical it was able to happen for me. And I'm not trying to make it sound like it was easy, because it certainly was not easy. And I mean, I still haven't had sugar. I'm 2 years and whatever a month now.
Wow.
So I don't see the need to bring it back into my life. And plus, like, I recognize some things about myself. I could still see myself sitting down and taking one bite of pie, and pretty soon the whole thing's gone, Like I recognize that eventually I'll have to trust myself. And that's important in this process, to trust who I am and what my life wants to be. But at the same time, like, I'm going to keep 10 miles away from that temptation until I'm pretty comfortable with that, because at this point, I just absolutely do not want to go back to that lifestyle in any way, shape, or form.
I love that you were determined to make it a lifestyle change. That's so often what I'm talking to my clients about, which is really the way we think about ourselves and the way we think about who we want to be is the biggest shift we can make. And I love that you said it's really, really trusting yourself. I'm guessing, I don't know about your experience with weight release, but for me, there was a lot of not self-loathing when I would overeat and being disgusted with myself. And then it was kind of like, I would keep doing it because I was angry at myself. And so then I'd eat emotionally, and it kind of kept this ball rolling of not feeling good about myself. And it sounds like you came to this like, you know what, this isn't serving me. This isn't helping me. My desire to take care of my health is more important than sticking with these habits that I have, these things that I do. How was that for you? Like, what was going on with you emotionally in that?
So, I mean, we jokingly talked about this off camera, but it's actually a really big part of this journey is I'm still single. Ideally, I would love to have a family, and, the self-image is important, and, in the digital age when, 90% of our dating is done by looking at a picture and swiping a direction, it's important it feels important. I shouldn't say whether it is or isn't, because I don't think it is in the grand scheme of things, but in our minds, it feels important to look our best. And, so that was probably the main motivating factors, because I could look at myself and say, listen, I have these pillars in line. Like, I'm a really good person. And the one thing that I'm lacking is a physical, I want to be able to look in the mirror and be happy with who I see. And, we talked about this, before, like, I'm so passionate about being able to just be happy with who we are, because it's the biggest cliche ever, but how do you love someone else if you can't love yourself,
Yeah.
But even though it's a cliche, like, it's a reality. It's true. How do we let our light shine to the world if deep down inside of us, we question whether we even have a light, and whether our light's worth shining out? And how do we help others and affect others and make the world a better place if we're getting up in the morning and, looking in the mirror and thinking, man, you're disgusting. But because let's be honest, those things just aren't true.
Yeah.
And we believe them. And so it's hard, I know that you've mentioned, and I listened to one of your previous podcasts, and, the self-defeating beliefs, I believe is what you called it, and maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me on that, but those things are real. Like, it's just so important for us to recognize, hey, I believe this, but can I look at this from a different angle? Can I really go deep down and touch that nerve and say, hey, is this really truth? Or is it just something that I've been told by a kid in high school and then I made it part of who I am? Or, is this really reality? And I think we'd almost always find that our self-image is kind of flawed, and it shouldn't be. Like, we should look at ourselves and say, hey, these are my strengths, and I don't have to define myself by my weaknesses anymore.
I love that. I love that. Yes. I mean, everything you're saying, I'm like, what we focus on grows. What we believe about ourselves is what we create. So I love that you had this, like, I want to love myself, which does sound cliche, but it really is more than just looking in the mirror and saying, I love myself. I love myself. It's really, what would loving myself motivate me to do for myself? Just like if you love a animal or a child or a plant, what do you do to take care of it? Taking good care of ourselves to where, like you say, you can look in the mirror and you can feed positive beliefs about yourself. And, I don't believe everyone needs to lose weight in order to feel good about themselves. That's not what this podcast is about. But I do believe that sometimes we become our best selves just simply by changing the way we see ourselves, the way we talk about ourselves in our own head. Because what's in our own head is like the most believable. That's what we believe. I could tell you how great you are every day, all day long. But if you in your head are saying, I'm not worth it, I'm disgusting, I can't stand myself, that's what you're going to believe at the end of the day, So I love that you're saying, our self-talk, the things that we tell ourselves is one of the most powerful things You know, you could take all the different green drinks and pills and try all the diets in the world, paleo and gluten-free and whatever. But if you don't, at the end of the day, look in the mirror and say, I love myself, I mean, that's really what this is, in my opinion, what this is about. And it sounds like that's also what you experienced. So what was it like for you as you started to really make some changes and started feeling like the weight release and feeling emotionally better? Like, it sounds like your anxiety, that improved? I mean, were you able to recognize how you were taking care of yourself emotionally as well?
Yeah, and ironically, like by the time I started this weight release journey, I felt like I had my anxiety. I had an experience last year that kind of reminded me that anxiety probably doesn't ever really go away. But I think by the time I started my weight loss journey, I felt like I had made that anxiety part of my that mental pillar, like addressing that, and I felt really strongly about where I was at with dealing with the anxiety. But yeah, it's been interesting from what you're talking about, how I felt. Like, ironically, like just because I lost, or I forgot the term you used. Sorry, I discharged or released all this weight. I can't undo 15 years of being overweight, and so I've had back issues and knee issues, and my body still hurts, but I feel so much better all the time, even though like I still have those aches and pains. I go to physical therapy a couple times a week to work on my back and my shoulder. I'm old. Let's be honest. I'm 42. Like,
hey, that's young.
I know, but no, I mean, I wish I had a better answer for that. Like, as far as the anxiety goes, like, it's still a part of my life. I just don't let it control me anymore. And I've kind of accepted the fact that maybe it will always be there, but I understand it now, and I understand what my triggers are, and I'm capable of stopping and saying, hey, time out here. What's causing this feeling? And then I can almost always trace it back to a root cause, like it's kind of like anger, like a parent getting angry with their kid. Like, are you really angry at your kid, or did something happen at work? Like, how do you trace that back to its root so that you can really address the underlying issue of it? And so for me, the weight release journey, it helped me feel better all around. The anxiety, I'm not sure it had a huge effect on it, but maybe it did. I just haven't spent a lot of time really looking down inside and examining that question. That's probably something I'd have to do to say yes or no on.
I love that. I think that, everything you're talking about, I think we have listeners that are going to totally relate. I wish I could have everybody raise their hand and say, I've experienced anxiety myself, or I've looked in the mirror, and, even people that maybe aren't struggling with weight, they've looked in the mirror and said negative things to themselves. So, I think that this is something that everyone can really relate to, is that we go through these difficult times of learning about who we want to become. And I love that it was kind of like you said, like a journey of discovery of these 5 pillars of what's important to you, of your values. I think that too. I think, for a lot of my clients, when we're in alignment with our values, that's when health and well-being is there, mentally, emotionally, physically. If we're out of alignment, like if I value saving money, but yet I spend everything, then I'm not going to feel good because it's something that I really value. So I love that, you talked about that and just really how, changing one part of your life affects every other part. We're not like just segments of a person, right? We are mind, body, spirit, and what affects one affects another part, So I love that when you started making that step towards change, it was like momentum to change other things. And I want people that are listening to this to know, even if you take one step, I love that you said, I just choose one New Year's resolution, because that's really what I really focus on with my clients is let's choose one thing that you want to change, one thing that you can, be committed to. So I love that you could do that, and then you could start seeing the success. And I think that gives us momentum to try other things and do other things when we start, seeing success with the one thing. So I feel like it all just kind of comes together, right? Whether it's the anxiety improving helped you, take better care of your health or not. It's just, it all kind of melts together, it seems like. Anything else that you kind of experienced as you were going through? And I'm sure you're still on a journey. I know I still am. I've struggled with anxiety my whole life. That's why I teach meditation, because I just feel like it's a really great way to know how to relate to your suffering, relate to the anxiety. But we're all on a journey, right? We're all learning and growing.
Yeah, I think, there's a couple of things. Like, if you think about your relationship with others, you build trust by keeping commitments to those people, right? And it's got to be the same way with ourselves. If you make a commitment and keep it for yourself, I feel like you're building trust with yourself. Like, science has shown that we just don't understand what's going on in our subconscious a lot, right? Just for example, 40% of the activities that we do in a day, we don't even use our brain for. Like, you don't use your brain to pick up your toothbrush and brush your teeth. They can prove that with science. Those things have become habits. And so when you build your trust with yourself by keeping commitments to yourself, no matter how small they are, it just snowballs. And then you start feeling good about yourself. I wish I could sit here and tell you that, I don't look in the mirror some mornings and think, oh my gosh, you're still, just those old thoughts, they're still there because, we talked about this a little bit. I love to learn, and I have a brother who's a clinical psychologist, and we talk about stuff all the time, and I read books, and our brains are wired a certain way. They just are. We can overwrite that and change that, but that original wiring is still there. But we can just make it new, stronger neural pathways that can help us overcome that. So when I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh man, you're gross, I can dismiss that thought because I know that it's not true. And so it's just important, I guess, from that standpoint, just to remember what it was like when I listened to that voice and let it control who I was and let it determine who I was, who was in my life and who wasn't, and, put myself in situations where, people could take advantage of you in ways. And I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now, but it's just, don't listen to that voice. It might never go away, and maybe it will. Maybe in 10 years we'll have this conversation and I'll be like, hey, haven't heard that voice in 4 years. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I love that. And, I really think for any of us, just knowing that we have an awareness of what's happening. Like you said, for a lot of years, I was kind of just a victim to what I was telling myself until I decided, okay, I can actually change the story in my head. It's still there, but I can be aware of it and notice it and say, do I want to believe that? Do I want to believe? What would I rather believe about myself? And what would it feel like if I believed something different about myself? So I think that's really powerful. I love this conversation, and that's why I forgot about the commercial. So really quick, we're going to just take a quick break. But when we get back, Brandon, I would love for you to share with us, maybe what some people might be curious about, which is, what you talked a little bit about some of the steps that you took, but maybe a little bit more about like what it took both mentally, physically, just logistically to release weight, to do that, because that's really hard. That's something that I think everyone has on their New Year's resolution. And so that's, I think something that is a great success is to be able to, and it shows more than just, like I say, the weight. It shows something that was going on inside of you. So I'd love for you to share that with us when we get back. Welcome back, everybody, to Wellness Wisdom. As you guys know, it's the month of February, and we're really focusing on loving ourselves. And I believe that really health and wellness, the core of it is really learning how to listen to ourselves and love ourselves. I'm talking to Brandon Halford today. Brandon is a friend of one of my friends, and now we're friends, but I've never actually officially met him in person. But we were talking about his own health journey, which I think is really inspiring and motivating. He went through this remaking himself time of his life where he said, you know what? I don't want to live like I'm living anymore. My motivation is to change. It's just really exciting to hear him say he had more of a desire to be better than to stay in the status quo, which how many of us, status quo is so comfortable, right? And there's a fear of getting out of that status quo to make some changes. Brandon, before the break, I asked you if you would kind of share with us a little bit more of what the steps that you took to, I know you talked a little bit about shifting the way you were thinking, but also what did you do to kind of keep yourself steady? I think most people can take the first step of, stop eating sugar or go to the gym, but how do you keep it consistent? How do you do that?
So for me, I just, as far as just strictly the weight loss, just that thought of gaining weight and getting back up to that and getting back into that cycle is honestly enough. That's enough to keep me motivated. And I've rediscovered some new things that I used to love. I used to love hiking when I was younger, and man, it was a chore to just walk up, 5 stairs. I had a friend comment to me about a month ago. He's like, man, I'd never wanted to say this to you, but we'd go golfing and you'd be panting and heaving, just walking out of the cart to hit your ball. But just that thought of not being able to do the things. I learned to play pickleball this year, and I absolutely love it. And
cool.
I picked up a basketball for the first time in 10 years, and a couple weeks ago, and it's fun. And I remember, and my body still remembers how to shoot. And it's those. It's hard to explain. And to be honest, I haven't I've still been going to the gym every day. Or not every day, but several times a week. And I've been working with a personal trainer because I really wanted to take it to the next level. From about, I'd say maybe August of last year till about 2 weeks ago, I hadn't lost any weight. So for 6 months, I didn't lose any weight. And then at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, maybe it's time I just started counting my calories again, because I got to the point where I was just guesstimating, making sure I didn't overeat and staying healthy. And I was still healthy and getting better. But like I said, my ultimate goal was to get down to 199. So I started counting calories, and I've lost 4 pounds over the last 2.5 weeks to just try to get back in there. But the whole point of that story is to say that for 6 months, I didn't gain any weight back. And that was really huge for me. And I had a friend, we were talking about a study that shows that if you can maintain healthy habits for a year, like, then your body can actually adjust to, and I have no idea if that's true. Don't take this as the science of Brandon here, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, and so it was a really big victory to not focus so much on, making sure I was maintaining my diet, and just was like, okay, I know I shouldn't eat this whole bag of tortilla chips. Those are like crack to me. I'm sorry. That's my one thing.
Yeah.
But it was just a huge victory to not gain any weight back. And so I'm super motivated again, and excited. And I went through some difficult times over the end of the last year, and it was fantastic for me to recognize that I had put new cornerstone foundational habits into my life, that when times got hard, I didn't crumble back into my old life. And Camille, that took real work. It took real work, but the fruit of that is so delicious to be able to sit here and say, I could have slipped back into old habits when times got difficult, and when my anxiety came back for the first time in a couple of years, and when just like things fell apart. Like, it was so refreshing, and now it's so motivating to continue on to that journey. Like, I know that you wanting to talk about like the first steps, like what I got going on, but it's hard for me to pin that down, because right now, like, I feel free. It's the only word I can say it. I feel free. I feel like the world is open to whatever I want it to be. And that is what I envisioned my life being like 20 years ago. And it's taken me several years to capture that, but it's a fantastic feeling.
Oh, I love that. And I love it when, I get some of my guests to just really be really authentic and vulnerable and talk about how this has been for you, and that you were able, it's that imagery of releasing something that was holding you back, and now the world is open, and there's this, just motivation to go forward. I always think that if we can look at what motivates us, they talk a lot about in personal development, what's your why? What's going to motivate you to make changes in your life? And I always say to my clients, we all have a why, whether it's wanting to play with your grandkids as you're older, or, being able to get up the stairs without, difficulty, or going hiking again, or, it's really looking at what are you going to gain. I love that you talked about what you're going to get out of it, and you talked about your successes. I really think this is a key to maintaining change, is seeing what went well, what were the good parts. So like you said, your victories, right? Those continue to motivate you by focusing on the victories and focusing on the habits that you'd created that were lifestyle habits, right? We all have habits of things we do every day without thinking about it, brushing our teeth, whatever. And when you have the habit of, this is how I care for myself, it becomes like just this natural thing, is what it sounded like it became for you. And I love that you said it was delicious. It was like such a, that fruit of taking care of yourself and loving yourself and seeing these changes happen was awesome. And I want people to know it's not, I mean, there is the hard part, like, the sticking to it and the consistency, but it's also, there's this rewarding part that I think we forget to emphasize, right? How rewarding it can be.
Oh yeah, but I just can't even, when just thinking back and remembering life, it's just not even the same. It's really not. Like, it's just different. And I recognize how people get stuck in ruts, because we've all been there. Like, and those ruts get discouraging. And I think the one thing that I have taken from this whole journey is just don't quit. Don't get discouraged. Like, I mean, you're going to get discouraged. I shouldn't say it that way, but don't beat yourself up. Like, be kind to yourself. Accept that you're human. I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago about this. Like, we define ourselves by our weaknesses because I feel like that's kind of how society does it, right? Like, they want people to look at, you know, like, it's so easy, especially in today's world. Like, you can't even say anything without being berated, you know. And in 10 years, you won't remember your weaknesses, but guess what? Your strengths will still be there. So focus on your strengths. Focus on what makes you you and good, and build that and work on that, and accept the fact that you're going to get discouraged. Accept the fact that you're going to have negative thoughts. But there's that old proverb, you know, I want to say it's Native American, but I don't know, and I don't want to go down that path. But you know, there's two wolves in your head, you know.
Yeah.
And whichever one you feed is the one that's going to be strong, you know. So feed the good wolf. That other one will wither away. It may never die. I don't know, because it hasn't died in my head. But I don't feed that thing. And so just don't quit. Don't get discouraged. If you pick, you know, 3 things and you only keep one of them, just focus on the fact that you kept the one, not the fact that you didn't keep the 2, you know. Sorry, I'm really, like I said, I'm passionate about this.
This is awesome.
I just want people to believe with all their heart, like, they have the power to be who they want to be. Like, they don't have to be slaves to society, to other people, to their own baser passions. Like, you might be a slave right now, but it doesn't mean you have to be that way your whole life. Like, you can change. You can take control. For me, it was just taking one small thing and changing that habit. And for some reason, it gave me the control and the power over all of my habits. And I would guess, I don't know, but I would guess that same model would work for most people.
I love that. It's so powerful. I love, you know, listening to you. I think you should be a coach out there saying, you can do this. Don't quit. You know, everybody, as you're listening to this, defining yourself by your strengths. You know, that's not, like you say, that's not a common thing, but how much that is going to be more motivating. And I love that you brought up basically what is a big cornerstone of what I teach, which is, let's have bumps in the road. We're going to have days that we don't stick to what we want to do with our eating. We're going to have days we don't exercise. There's going to be days that we don't handle our stress well. But let us define ourselves by what we want to become and have compassion for ourselves. I love that you brought that up, that if you get discouraged, accept that you're human. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all, you know, have imperfections. And I love that you said, you know, just, it's kind of like the resilience, right? You bounce back, you get back up again when something happens that gets you off your course, you know, and realize that you can keep going and you can see that end goal in mind and keep that focus. I love this. I love everything you're talking about, because I think it's so important for us to learn how to be compassionate to ourselves as we have a health journey, whether you want to eat differently or exercise or just whatever it is, you want to meditate daily, whatever it is you're doing, really being compassionate to what it's like to change something, and recognizing that taking the first step is awesome, that you're just even on the road is amazing. So I love everything we're talking about. And I've just kind of gotten carried away in this whole conversation because it's something that I feel so passionately about as well. Brandon, what other, I call it like words of wisdom, what other things, is there any final words that you have for people as they're listening to this? And maybe they've set the same goal every year in 2018, 2019, and 2020, and they've just felt discouraged and they don't know what to do because they feel like they feel powerless when it comes to their goals. Is there any advice you would give, any words of wisdom that you would have for them as they're struggling with trying to make some changes?
I think that would be a two-part answer to that, okay? The first one is, if you mess up, who cares? Like, don't let it derail you. Like, who cares if you, like you said when you just a second ago, like if you eat too much today, who cares? You got tomorrow. Like, just don't eat too much tomorrow. Like, don't let fear and failure guide you, because you will never win if those are your motivating factors. Like, if you just have to focus on love, for me, that's the key. Like, focus on love, focus on something else, whatever you want it to be, but don't let fear and failure be your guiding lights, because success is going to be extremely hard. Beat those things. They don't need to control you. And honestly, I forgot what the second part was, so that'll be my
I love it. Words. I love it. If you mess up, get back up again and focus on love. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with us your personal journey, for being vulnerable to share this. I know that so many of our listeners are going to relate to it. I know I relate to it. And everybody, as you're thinking about this, I hope you can recognize your strengths, how amazing you are, the things that only you can do. They're uniquely a reason why you were put on this earth, and that you can make peace with your body and like who you are. Take care, everybody.